Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
But outside of that, the Fed chair, it's interesting to see here. Has he gotten put in? Is Warsh in, or is it still? It's not in, right? They have because Powell's there till the 15th, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want that job. Would you want it?
I wouldn't touch that job with a 100-foot pole, and the reason why is because you're in a no-win situation. Because right now you have President Trump that's saying, "Look, Powell, you need to lower interest rates," and if Kevin Warsh comes in, he's saying that he hasn't received any pressure from Trump or any of that stuff. Yeah, because you're not the chair yet. The moment he steps in, he's going to have pressure to lower the interest rates. But then what's important to understand is if you lower interest rates, then it's easier to get money. And if you can get money because, you're a business and you need a loan, it's going to cost you less. If you want to buy a house, you have a lower interest rate, then you're more apt to buy a house. But then the problem is that all this money starts to flood the market. And when the money starts to flood the market, eventually the value of the dollars you have in your savings account begins to erode. And so there's always these important levers. Now, if you keep interest rates high, then everything that you're trying to buy is more expensive. And so it's very difficult, especially right now, because we have an affordability issue. Gas prices in some parts of the country approaching $7 a gallon, which is ridiculous.
You only talk about California, Hawaii, and Alaska.
Well, okay, but I'm sure
California's self-inflicted. Hawaii might be too, though.
Well, the war exacerbated that because just a few
months. The war's over, though.
No,
the president said the war's over. He said it was over.
The president said the war is over.
So does Secretary of State, though.
Yeah.
Secretary of State at the press conference said yesterday.
And that goes to your talks about the Democratic Party that you can't believe what politicians say. It's not over. There's some calm that's happening right now, but Iran knows that they have a stranglehold on the global stage right now, so they're not going to relinquish that. But going back to the Fed chair, I wouldn't want his job because right now, because of the lack of affordability, you're going to have so much pressure on both sides. And until we get to a place where we either start spending less as a country and move towards balancing the budget, the only answer to our long-term success is two things: balancing the budget and striving for a more successful middle class. Because right now you have what's called a K-shaped economy. You have the overwhelming benefits that come to the top 1%, and then the overwhelming detriment of people that don't have that type of income. And there's this wide gap. We need a thriving middle class. And that's really what's made America the thriving economy. It's having a solid middle class. And right now that's being eroded. And so until we get a balanced budget and stop having all of this money that's going to service the debt, nothing's going to change. And so the way to get to that is very painful. And so the quality of lives that we enjoy right now for a while need to change in order for that to happen. So what are your thoughts about the direction of the new supposed Fed chair and all of the challenges that Kevin Warsh, if he's appointed, going to how do you think that's going to, if you were him, how would you feel?
Do you think he's grandstanding or saying that for show when he says, I'm not going to lower rates? Do you think he's just saying that just to say that? Or do you think he's just saying that now and then when he gets in, he does it? What's your thoughts on that? Real quick.
Yeah, I think that he understands that he has to keep rates high. And so
I think anybody understands that, though.
I think he's going to feel pressure from the president, and I don't think he understands how effective Trump is in his bully pulpit to make people bend to his will, because he has the voice of the media. And so we're humans. We're going to fall to pressure. And I think he's going to succumb to it as well.
I don't think he's going to lower rates, at least immediately. And I don't think he should lower rates. And the reason why is because I think inflation would come back real hot, real fast, because I think there's a lot of people that, I mean, I don't know, Len. I don't know how it is in California as much as it is here in my area. I mean, I think I live in a bubble where I'm at. So to me, when I go out, it's like, it feels like 2008 to me when I go out. Everybody's free, you know what I mean? Like restaurants are full, malls are full, people are busy, things are happening. I don't know how it is necessarily in your area, but I do know in my area it is happening. Like it's happening. Like it doesn't look like anybody in my area is struggling. Now, again, I could be because I'm in a bubble, but I do also know that like stuff is it's expensive. Like when you can only get a half a tank of gas with $50 in Texas, that's a problem. That's a freaking problem, because normally $65 fills you up at Sam's Club or Costco. That's a problem, right? I paid like $4.50 a gallon, $4.50 a gallon for premium, and I was like, oh, right, for 93. And yeah, $7 a gallon of gas does exist in California. Doesn't exist anywhere else, but that's because California is California. But I do think that he will eventually lower rates. I just don't think now is the right time, because you will create so many people. I think there's a massive amount of people that want to just go out there and just like, I think there's still a large group of people in America today that are holding on to pre-COVID. Like it's going to come back, and it's not. It's never going to come back to the way it was pre-COVID, price-wise anyways. And I do think that COVID did adjust prices up to where they should be based on the amount of debt. Like, you get what I'm saying? So the only way for prices to come down and for things to get cheaper is for America to start being a massive net exporter again. And that's exactly what we're becoming. We are now the largest net exporter of gas, oil, and natural gas, which is great. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see more of that. So I think once that starts to happen, and then once we start to see advanced like development in other sectors, you know, like AI, maybe some technology, biotech, and I think the economy is going to hyperscale. Like Elon Musk, I've listened to Elon Musk talk about that a lot, and how GDP is going to scale fast into the double percentages, 20 percentages. I think once we reach that, you're going to see debt and money is going to be restructured in certain ways where the debt's going to be insignificant, because at this point, the GDP is going to be so large that figure becomes so small now. And we might not deal in denomination sizes. We might have to change because at one point, a dollar is going to be, things are going to have to change structurally in certain ways. And I think that what we're seeing too is we're seeing two worlds clash. We're seeing the old postmodern world is now clashing with the future world. And I think we're experiencing the same clash that the agrarian world clashed when the industrial world came in, right? And we're seeing that clash. We're seeing the two clashes. We're seeing the digital world clash with the hyper digital world, or whatever the new world's called, right? Because whatever that is, I just say it's the hyper digital world, because everything will eventually become hyper digital, right? Like you'll walk around and say, computer, give me a da 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 da, and that will happen, right? Like, computer, what is the theory of economics in this in the computer, like you could do right now with the chatbot. And I think that America is going to lead that charge. But I would like to see massive infrastructure spending in America, because I think that if Trump got around that, and I think we've talked about this before, and Mark Cuban has said it before, that if a president goes all in on massive infrastructure, like deliberate infrastructure, like things that matter, like America should be on crazy right now developing nuclear energy technologies and things like that, because the biggest threat to a modern society today isn't necessarily a military, while it still is today. I think the biggest threat is energy generation. Like, can you generate enough energy? And right now, you know who's positioned in America? You know what states are positioned in America the best for data centers and energy swings and output? Do you know what they are? You know what states they are?
More of this in the South, right?
Louisiana, Alabama, all of these states. I think Louisiana or Alabama, one of those, I think it's Alabama, has the highest energy reserve peak energy reserve out of any state in the country. So I think maybe that's how the South becomes economically viable, because the South's been economically depressed ever since, the Civil War, right? Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that's how the South becomes a powerhouse. I mean, that's how California became a powerhouse, because it was a fiscal leaning, pragmatic, right leaning state that embraced business, right? And culture and freedom and American ideals. And now it's just whatever it is. I know I'm going long-winded, Len. Stop me when you want to, but I think the government, and this is where I get mad about government, but at the same time, I think interest rates should be deliberately dropped for certain sectors to spur economic growth. And I think the biggest one is infrastructure. Yeah. Power, water, all of those things, roads, everything that we need for the future, America needs to invest heavily in that. And I think that's also the reason why we're starting to cut off the rest of the freeloaders in the world, because we need that money to be repatriated here so that people here can stop going, oh, things are so modern. Yeah, because we're paying for it to be modern in other countries.
Yeah, I think when you look at interest rates and you look at the purpose of fluctuating interest rates up and down, it has to be with a specific purpose. And so in order for that to happen, the only way it works, it goes back to my original point of having a balanced budget. And the only way to go to a balanced budget is to create austerity measures that really, really hurt us in the short term. And so the problem is that elected officials don't have the political will to do what's necessary. And so because their main objective is to get reelected, they would do whatever is politically expedient for them right here and right now. And the problem also is, you talked earlier in your comments about how, we're still, you go and you feel like you live in a bubble. You go to the restaurant, they're full. You go to places where people are spending disposable income. But the challenge is this. Do we really have the financial capacity to spend like we're spending? And I would say no, because when you look at the median income in the United States and you look at the cost of living has gone up disproportionately to the rise in income. And so what's happening is, in our households, we listen to what the United States is doing. We're all deficit spending. That's why credit card debt is at an all-time high. That's why student loan debts are so high. And it's because we're spending money we don't have. And so we all need to collectively tone it down and start understanding, there have been people who have become extraordinarily wealthy that says, you know what, I'm going to live as if I have nothing. And I want to psychologically align myself with what that feels like. So I'm going to purposefully live on $100 to $250 this month. Now, outside of, my housing and all of those things, just to adopt that mindset. And I think that small little anecdotal lesson is a good lesson for us as a country to say we overspend in our households and we overspend as a country. And the only way to be able to come back to the reality of how our lives should look is we need to experience what it feels like not to live in excess. But the only way out of that, going back to a point you made in which I agree, is that if AI begins to take off and we begin to have so much production that we start to create wealth in other sectors, that's the only way out. Now, the part that I disagree with what you said is in the South, when you look at their way out, the problem is that you have all of these data centers that are moving into neighborhoods, and they're moving in without the consent of the people who are being impacted by it. And so I definitely have some major issues with that. To me, there's enough raw land that's away from population centers to be able to look at that. And then, of course, space is another one that we've got to consider. So I like the fact that the Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 that's getting ready to go to the moon, we're going to start colonizing the moon and start using that as an energy source. But that's years and years away. And so when you look at the opportunity to create data centers, I know you need water. So if there's a way that we can find ways to pipe water into places that are away from population centers, I'm all for that. But there's so many people that are poor, disenfranchised, and uninformed about what's happening. Because look, if I'm worried about my meal from day to day, I see something that's being built. I don't necessarily have the luxury to know what's being built. Why is that a problem? I don't necessarily have the luxury to think that deep. So as a country, we have to work towards those situations where people that don't have the luxury to think along those lines, elected officials need to keep that in mind, that what we do impacts our fellow human being. And the South, unfortunately, is right now a place where data centers are thriving to the detriment of the people that are in the area.
And again, that it goes, I think, back to the responsibility, which is governments and politicians are there to regulate and to watch and to make sure that the profits of the land are given back to the people. Because I thought, and this is again why the rest of the world hates America so much. And not because we're evil, because they just, again, you spoke about it earlier where you used the word where it impacts, right? It impacts you. So an action, what was that word you used? Where, like, for example, you said African American families are disproportionate today because slavery still has an impact. You said a certain word that it creates that action, right? So in other words, because this action happened, you're still feeling that action, 20 years later, because you used an example as well on it.
Okay,
right?
You're talking about a different impact.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm saying here is that, these politicians are supposed to safeguard and watch out, and they don't, and they're not, and the profits should be going back. And again, this is exactly why the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is still by and large living under communists, socialists, dictators, or monarchs. And at the end of the day, it all goes back to the same system. The whole world grows and raised up on monarchies and kings and queens. Okay. And those are still by and large what most countries live under, monarchies, essentially, or dictators, because they want to be like kings, or communists because they want to be like kings. Well, communists and socialists really want to be like gods. They think they're like gods. Like Joseph Stalin thought he was God probably at one point, What's interesting is that if you look at it today, history today, or people that speak out against atrocities today, they only vilify fascists, right? But they don't vilify communists or socialists. Isn't that weird? Like everyone's, Hitler was so bad. We know that. We know. What about Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao? What about those guys?
Right.
And how come no one talks about those guys? How come no one talks about the how many hundreds of millions of people died, right? And that's the thing, is these politicians still do the same thing today, right? And most of them look at America and go, wait a minute, understand. And this is the point I make. Isn't all of this stuff in America supposed to belong to me and you, Len?
Absolutely.
Like, this land is my land, this land is yours. Aren't the politicians supposed to just make sure that the national sovereignty and the national wealth of the sovereign of America is just preserved for everyone, regardless if you're black, white, Hispanic, Latino, gay, straight, whatever? But instead, we've created all these ideals and all of these things around all these things that we have to protect, which really is just one simple thing. America is a corporation. It always has been. It needs to continue to be. Make money, maintain sovereignty, make sure that Apple's not dumping poison in its phones, and away we go. And let Elon Musk buy Spirit Airlines.
Did you hear about the social movement? There's a guy on Instagram and TikTok that's getting a lot of interest, and they're looking at crowdfunding Spirit Airlines. Did you hear about that?
I only saw that Elon Musk was maybe buying Spirit Airlines. I hope someone buys it. Like, that would be super cool I hope someone buys Spirit Airlines and completely reinvents transportation in that sector, because we essentially own all the airlines. And that's what I'm talking about. We bailed out the airlines. So many, like, millennials in my age group, if you were working hard in the early 2000s through 2008, you know what I'm talking about. And the late 90s, when all these airlines failed and we had to bail them all out, right? We own the freaking airlines. Where's my profit share from Delta, United, and all these freaking guys? Where's your profit share check, Len? I want to know. In fact, if you lived through 2008 as well and we bailed out all the banks, I'm still waiting for my profit share check from that too. Len, did you get yours yet? Because I haven't gotten mine yet.
Still waiting for it, bro.
This is the kind of stuff why we've gotten to the situation we're in. But I don't want to. We're out of time today. But
yes.
Phenomenal conversation today, Len.
And I think enjoyed our conversations, man.
I think it was I think we touched on something that was very touchy too, and I think it was handled very well. And I like the way it went because it needs to be talked about. It absolutely needs to be talked about. And people need to remember these things and how we got here, because when we start encouraging kids to go protest in the streets instead of learning how to read, then they can't read anymore. That means they can't read books anymore, which means they don't understand history, which means they don't understand how we got here. And if they read more history and they read more stuff, they would understand that the hammer and the sickle is evil. And it is not something that's virtuous and great. And it doesn't work because it's been tried. Go read a book. Instead of talking so much about how Hitler was so bad, because he is, go look at Chairman Mao and go look at Joseph Stalin, please. And you will see they were probably far eviler, if not the same, as Hitler. So.
I agree. Well, Chris, it's always interesting having conversations with you, sir. And I never know where we're going to go in our conversations. And so it was good. I enjoyed this. And for those of you that are watching, find people that you can learn from and that you don't have the same shared background, so you can continue to look at life through somebody else's lens. And that's what we look to do here on this channel. So if you like what we do, feel free to subscribe and tell other people. And if you don't, it's okay as well. Comment, let us know what your thoughts are. So with that being said, Chris, it's always a pleasure. Until next week, man, you take care.
See you in the next one.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.